She accidentally said "love you" at the end of the call with a billionaire client. The next day, she received an email that changed everything. The words slipped out like a confession she never meant to make. "Love you, bye." And in the silence that followed, Kiesha Cole realized she'd just told her billionaire client something that could either destroy her career or change her life forever. Before we get deep into the story, please let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Hit subscribe if you're hooked in and ready to enjoy this story, because tomorrow I have another beautiful story to share with you, and I don't want you to miss it for anything. Now, let's get into the story. 3 hours earlier, Kiesha Cole had been the picture of professional confidence, her perfectly pressed red blazer a suit of armor as she navigated the marble lobby of Sterling and Associates Marketing. The morning sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows caught the platinum lettering on the glass doors. One of Atlanta's most prestigious marketing firms, where she'd fought tooth and nail to earn her place as a junior account executive. But confidence, Kiesha had learned, was often just fear wearing designer clothes. She paused at her reflection in the elevator's polished steel doors, smoothing an imaginary wrinkle from her blazer. 24 years old, and finally landing the Morrison Industries account, the biggest client assignment of her career. Yet she still felt like that scholarship kid from East Atlanta, convinced someone would eventually realize she didn't belong in these gleaming towers of corporate success. The elevator dinged softly as it reached the 12th floor. Sterling and Associates sprawled across 2 floors, a maze of glass offices and open workspaces where Atlanta's marketing elite crafted campaigns for Fortune 500 companies. The scent of fresh coffee and expensive cologne mingled in the air-conditioned atmosphere, punctuated by the soft hum of productivity. Keyboards clicking, phones ringing, the gentle whoosh of the city 12 stories below. "Morning, Kiesha," called out Derek, one of the senior associates, not looking up from his triple monitor setup. "Morrison Industries has been calling. Your billionaire boyfriend wants to finalize campaign details before his board meeting." Kiesha's stomach performed a small, traitorous flutter at the mention of Mark Morrison, though she shot Derek a warning look. "He's a client, Derek. A very important client." "Uh-huh." Derek's smirk suggested he'd noticed the extra care she put into her appearance on Morrison call days. "Well, your very important client sounds pressed for time." Kiesha nodded, making her way to her modest office. Not a corner office like the partners enjoyed, but a real office with a door and windows overlooking the city. For a girl who'd grown up sharing a bedroom with 2 sisters, it still felt like a miracle. Through her windows, Atlanta sprawled in all its contradictory glory. Glass towers reaching toward heaven while below, the streets told stories of struggle and triumph, Old South and new dreams colliding in perpetual motion. Just like her own story. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister Kiana. "Big presentation day. Remember what Mama always said. You belong anywhere you decide to plant your feet. Love you, sis." The irony wasn't lost on her. Love. Such a simple word, yet it had the power to complicate everything. Landing the Morrison Industries account had been a career-defining moment. When Mr. Sterling announced the assignment 3 months ago, half the office had expected it to go to someone with more seniority. But Kiesha's presentation on authentic community engagement had won over the partners, and apparently, their mysterious billionaire client, who preferred to work directly with the strategist rather than through intermediaries. "You understand what this means for your career," Rebecca Thompson, her colleague and closest friend at the firm, had told her over celebratory drinks. "Morrison Industries isn't just a client. They're a stepping stone to partner track. Don't mess this up." Rebecca's words echoed in her mind now as she reviewed her notes for the call. Beautiful, ambitious Rebecca with her Harvard MBA and family connections. The kind of polished perfection that made Kiesha sometimes wonder if her own success was just luck disguised as talent. 30 miles north, in the penthouse offices of Morrison Industries, Mark Morrison stood at his own wall of windows, watching the city wake up below. Where others saw Atlanta's promise and energy, Mark often saw distance and isolation, a kingdom he'd built that no one seemed able to breach. At 34, he'd achieved everything his father had demanded and more. The company his grandfather started with a single construction truck now employed thousands across the Southeast. Forbes had featured him on their cover twice. Yet success, he'd discovered, was often just loneliness wearing an expensive suit. His assistant knocked on the frosted glass door. "Mr. Morrison? Ms. Cole from Sterling and Associates is on line 1 for the campaign review." Mark's chest tightened imperceptibly. Kiesha Cole. For 3 months, she'd been the voice that made his weekly campaign calls feel less like business obligations and more like conversations he actually looked forward to. Unlike the parade of polished executives who usually handled his accounts, Kiesha spoke to him like he was a person, not a walking checkbook. "Put her through to the conference room," he said, straightening his navy tie. "I'll take it there." The conference room was a testament to modern corporate power. Gleaming table, leather chairs that cost more than most people's cars, technology that could connect him to anywhere in the world. But when Kiesha's voice filled the space through the sound system, all that cold luxury seemed to warm. "Good morning, Mr. Morrison. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." Even through the speakers, her voice carried that slight southern lilt mixed with professional polish, like honey over steel. It made him think of summer evenings and genuine laughter, things that had become rare in his carefully orchestrated life. "Never a bad time for you, Ms. Cole," he replied, then immediately wondered if that sounded too personal. The line between business and whatever this was becoming had started blurring weeks ago. "I've got the final mock-ups for your board presentation," Kiesha continued, and he could hear the rustle of papers, the barely contained excitement in her voice. "I think you're going to love what we've done with the community outreach angle. It's authentic, impactful, and it's going to make Morrison Industries the kind of company people feel proud to support." For the next hour, they worked through campaign details with the easy rhythm they'd developed. Kiesha's ideas were brilliant. She understood not just marketing, but heart. She made his company's expansion into affordable housing sound like a movement instead of just a business strategy. The tagline "Building Dreams, one home at a time" tests incredibly well with focus groups, she was saying, and through the video screen, Mark found himself watching her animated gestures, the way her natural curls framed her face when she leaned forward with enthusiasm. "You've outdone yourself, Kiesha," he said, using her first name without thinking. The Ms. Cole formality had started feeling ridiculous weeks ago. "This is exactly what we needed." "Thank you, Mark." His name sounded different in her voice, softer, more personal. "I have to admit, this project has been special to me. What you're doing with affordable housing, it matters. Where I grew up, a program like this could have changed everything for families like mine." The vulnerability in her admission hit him unexpectedly. Behind the polished professional was a woman who understood struggle, who'd climbed her way up from something harder than inherited wealth. It made him want to know everything: her story, her dreams, what made her laugh when she wasn't trying to impress clients. "I'd like to hear more about that," he said quietly. "About where you grew up. About you." The pause stretched just long enough to change the atmosphere between them, shifting from business to something more intimate. "That sounds..." Kiesha's voice was softer now, almost shy. "I'd like that too." They spent another 20 minutes discussing logistics, but underneath the professional conversation, something else was building. An awareness, a possibility that neither seemed ready to name. Finally, Kiesha gathered her notes, the sound of shuffling papers filling the silence. "I think that covers everything for today. The presentation is locked and loaded for your board meeting. You're going to knock them dead." "Thanks to you," Mark said, meaning it. "Seriously, Kiesha, your work on this has been exceptional. I know I said it before, but..." "Stop," she laughed, and the sound made him wish he could see her smile in person instead of through a screen. "You're going to make me blush, and I've got another client call in 5 minutes. I can't be walking into a meeting all flustered." The word "flustered" hung in the air between them, loaded with implication. "Well," Mark said, his voice dropping slightly, "we can't have that." Another pause, charged with the tension of things unsaid. "I should go," Kiesha said finally. "The presentation materials will be in your inbox within the hour. Thank you for trusting me with this, Mark." This account means everything to my career. You've earned every bit of that trust." Kiesha was gathering her things, her mind already shifting to her next call, when the words tumbled out with the same automatic warmth she used for family, for people she loved. "Thanks for everything, Mark. The contract looks perfect. Love you, bye." The line went dead. Mark sat in his conference room, staring at the phone display that showed call ended, a slow smile spreading across his face for the first time in months. In 3 months of calculated business conversations, Kiesha Cole had just revealed something beautiful. That somewhere beneath the professional polish, she spoke to him like he mattered. Like he was more than just another client. Meanwhile, in her small office at Sterling and Associates, Kiesha stood frozen, her phone still pressed to her ear, her face a mask of absolute horror. "Oh God," she whispered to the empty room. "Oh God, oh God, oh God." She'd just told her biggest client, the account that could make or break her career, that she loved him. Not just any client, but Mark Morrison. Billionaire Mark Morrison, with his perfect smile and eyes that seemed to see straight through her professional facade to the girl from East Atlanta who still couldn't quite believe she belonged in these glass towers. What do you think Kiesha should do next? Should she call back and address it head-on, or pretend it never happened? Drop a comment below, and let me know how you'd handle this mortifying situation. The silence in her office felt deafening. Outside, Atlanta hummed with life, but inside, Kiesha felt like the world had stopped spinning. 3 months of careful professionalism, of building the most important client relationship of her career, possibly destroyed by 2 words that had slipped out as naturally as breathing. Because the truth, the terrifying, wonderful truth she was only now admitting to herself, was that some part of her had meant it. Kiesha spent the next hour in a state of barely controlled panic, her fingers hovering over her keyboard a dozen times as she drafted and deleted apology emails. Each attempt sounded worse than the last, too formal, too casual, too desperate, not desperate enough. "Dear Mr. Morrison, I apologize for my unprofessional comment during our call. Delete. Hi Mark, about that thing I said. Delete. Please disregard my previous. Delete." By lunch, she'd settled on pretending it never happened. People said things they didn't mean all the time in business calls. Surely a sophisticated man like Mark Morrison would understand it was just a slip of the tongue, muscle memory from ending calls with family. It didn't mean anything. It couldn't mean anything. She was trying to convince herself of this when Rebecca Thompson appeared in her doorway, designer heels clicking against the hardwood floor. "Rough morning?" Rebecca asked, her perfectly manicured eyebrow arched in concern. At 26, Rebecca had the kind of effortless elegance that came from boarding schools and country clubs. Blonde hair that never seemed to frizz, makeup that never smudged, and a confidence that suggested she'd never doubted her place in the world. "Something like that," Kiesha muttered, finally abandoning her computer screen. "Just the Morrison call. Problems with the campaign?" Rebecca settled into the chair across from Kiesha's desk, crossing her long legs. "I told you that account was too big for someone without more senior-level experience. Maybe I should have a word with Mr. Sterling about bringing me in as backup." "No." The word came out sharper than Kiesha intended. "I mean everything's fine. The campaign is solid. Mark, Mr. Morrison, loved the presentation." "Mark." Rebecca's smile didn't reach her eyes. My, we're getting cozy with the billionaire, aren't we?" Heat flooded Kiesha's cheeks. "It's not like that. He's just easy to work with." "I'm sure he is." Rebecca's tone carried just enough edge to sting. "Just remember, honey, men like Mark Morrison don't usually mix business with pleasure for girls like us. We're employees, not equals." The comment hit its mark, awakening every insecurity Kiesha had spent years trying to silence. Rebecca always knew exactly where to press, always wrapped her barbs in just enough concern to make them feel like friendship. "I should get back to work," Kiesha said stiffly. "Of course. But Kiesha." Rebecca paused at the doorway, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Be careful. A girl can get hurt thinking she means more to a client than she actually does." After Rebecca left, Kiesha stared at her computer screen, seeing her own reflection in the black monitor. Maybe Rebecca was right. Maybe she'd been reading too much into Mark's warmth, his personal questions, the way his voice softened when they talked. Maybe the "love you" slip had just revealed how pathetically she'd been projecting her own feelings onto a professional relationship. She was spiraling into self-doubt when her email chimed. The sender made her blood freeze. Mark.Morrison@morrisonindustries.com. Subject: about today's call. Her hands trembled as she clicked it open. Dear Kiesha, I hope this email finds you well. Regarding our conversation today, I wanted to address something that was said at the end of our call. I've been thinking about it all afternoon. I realize this is highly unconventional, but would you be available for dinner tonight? There's something I'd like to discuss in person. Somewhere away from conference rooms and quarterly projections. If you're interested, I know a quiet place downtown. Nothing fancy, just good food and honest conversation. I hope I'm not overstepping, but some things are better said face to face. Yours, Mark. P.S. For what it's worth, I've never had a business associate tell me they loved me before. It was refreshing. Kiesha read the email 3 times, her emotions cycling from terror to confusion to something that felt dangerously close to hope. He wasn't firing her. He wasn't demanding she be reassigned. He was asking her to dinner. She glanced around the office, noting how many of her colleagues were still buried in their work, oblivious to the fact that her world had just tilted off its axis. Through her window, Atlanta sprawled below, indifferent to the small miracle happening on the 12th floor of Sterling and Associates. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard for a long moment before she began typing. Mark, I would love to have dinner with you tonight. And thank you for being so understanding about everything. Just tell me when and where. Kiesha. She hit send before she could change her mind. The restaurant Mark had chosen was nothing like what Kiesha had expected. Instead of some stuffy 5-star establishment where billionaires typically dined, he'd picked a cozy Italian place in Virginia Highland. All exposed brick and soft lighting, where the scent of garlic and fresh basil made her mouth water. She'd changed into a flowing emerald dress that brought out the gold in her brown eyes, her natural curls framing her face in a way that felt both professional and feminine. When she spotted Mark at a corner table, her breath caught. Gone was the corporate armor of expensive suits. Instead, he wore dark jeans and a navy button-down that made his blue eyes seem even more striking, his usual perfectly styled hair slightly mussed as if he'd been running his fingers through it. He stood when he saw her, that smile she'd only seen hints of during video calls spreading across his face like sunrise. You look beautiful, he said simply, pulling out her chair. Thank you. She settled into her seat, hyper-aware of how different this felt from their usual dynamic. This place is lovely. Not what I expected. What did you expect? His eyes crinkled with amusement as he sat across from her. I don't know. Somewhere with waiters in white gloves and menus without prices. Mark laughed. A real laugh, not the polite chuckle she'd heard in business meetings. You think I'm that pretentious? No, I think you're that rich. The words slipped out before she could stop them, and she immediately flushed. I'm sorry, that was honest, Mark finished. I like honest. It's refreshing. He studied her face for a moment. Can I tell you something? That slip today, the love you, it was the most genuine moment I've experienced in months. Kiesha's heart hammered against her ribcage. Mark. No, let me finish. He leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping to something more intimate. Do you know what it's like to have every conversation feel like a transaction? To wonder if people are talking to you or your bank account? She shook her head, mesmerized by the vulnerability in his eyes. But with you, from our very first call, it felt different. You challenged my ideas, improved my vision, treated me like... He paused, searching for words. Like I was just Mark. Not Morrison Industries, not a Forbes cover story. Just me. The waiter appeared to take their order, giving Kiesha a moment to process Mark's words. When they were alone again, she found herself leaning forward, drawn into his orbit. I need to confess something, she said quietly. That slip wasn't entirely accidental. Mark's eyebrows rose. No, I mean I didn't plan it. But, she took a shaky breath. I've been looking forward to our calls more than I should. wondering what you're like outside of business. Whether that warmth in your voice during our meetings is real, or just good client relations. It's real, Mark said immediately. More real than anything else in my life lately. Their appetizers arrived, but neither seemed particularly interested in eating. The space between them felt charged, alive with possibility, and the weight of lines being crossed. Tell me about you, Mark said. The real you, not the Sterling and Associates version. Where did you grow up? What made you want to get into marketing? Kiesha hesitated. This was dangerous territory. Personal, vulnerable, the kind of sharing that could complicate everything. But something in Mark's eyes made her want to trust him with pieces of herself she usually kept hidden. East Atlanta, she said finally. Grew up in a tiny house with my mom, 2 sisters, and whichever boyfriend my mama was dating that month. We didn't have much, but mama made sure we knew we could be anything we wanted if we worked hard enough. What did she do for work? Cleaned office buildings downtown. Sometimes she'd take me with her during summer breaks. Kiesha smiled at the memory. I'd see all these important-looking people in their suits, carrying briefcases, looking like they owned the world. I wanted that. Not the power, exactly, but the confidence. The belonging. Mark listened intently, his blue eyes never leaving her face. And now you're working in one of those buildings, making campaigns that shape how people see the world. Some days I still can't believe it's real, Kiesha admitted. Like someone's going to realize I don't actually belong there. But you do belong there. Mark's voice was firm, almost fierce. Your work is brilliant, Kiesha. The way you understood the heart of what we're trying to do with the housing project. The way you made it feel authentic instead of just another corporate initiative. That's not luck. That's talent. The sincerity in his voice made her chest tight with emotion. Thank you. I should be thanking you. You've reminded me why I wanted to do this project in the first place. It's not about good publicity or tax breaks. It's about actually making a difference. They talked through dinner, the conversation flowing as easily as wine. Mark told her about growing up with wealth, but feeling disconnected from it. About the pressure to live up to his father's legacy. About how success had become a beautiful prison that kept real relationships at bay. That's why tonight matters so much, he said as they shared tiramisu. When was the last time you had a conversation that wasn't about work or money, or what someone wanted from you? Kiesha considered this. Honestly? Too long. Same. Mark's hand moved across the table, his fingers brushing hers. I know this complicates things professionally. I know there are a dozen reasons why we shouldn't. But, Kiesha's voice was barely above a whisper. But I can't pretend I don't feel this connection. Can you? The touch of his fingers against hers sent electricity through her entire body. Around them, the restaurant hummed with quiet conversation and clinking glasses. But Kiesha felt like they were in their own bubble, suspended between the professional world they knew and something entirely new. No, she admitted. I can't pretend. Mark's thumb traced across her knuckles. Such a simple touch, but it made her feel like her skin was on fire. What does this mean for us? For your job? I don't know. The honesty felt terrifying and liberating at the same time. I just know I don't want this evening to end. Something shifted in Mark's expression, his eyes darkening with an intensity that made her breath catch. It doesn't have to. They walked slowly to the parking deck, neither wanting to break the spell that had settled over them. The June air was warm and heavy with the promise of summer storms, Atlanta's skyline glittering around them like a backdrop for possibility. This is crazy, Kiesha said softly as they stopped beside her car. Completely insane, Mark agreed, stepping closer. I should probably tell you that I've never done anything like this before. Mixed business with whatever this is. What is this? She asked, looking up at him. Mark cupped her face gently, his thumbs brushing across her cheekbones. I have no idea, but I want to find out. When his lips met hers, it was soft and tentative at first, a question more than a statement. But when Kiesha melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, the kiss deepened into something that spoke of months of suppressed attraction finally finding its voice. Come home with me, Mark whispered against her lips, his forehead resting against hers. Every rational part of Kiesha's brain screamed warnings about professional boundaries and complicated situations. But her heart had already decided. Okay, she breathed. Mark's penthouse was everything she'd imagined and nothing like she'd expected. Yes, it was luxurious, floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the Atlanta skyline, furniture that probably cost more than her annual salary, art that belonged in museums. But it was also warm, lived in, with books scattered across side tables, and a guitar leaning against the wall that suggested hidden depths. "You play?" she asked, running her fingers along the guitar's strings. "Badly," Mark admitted, shrugging out of his jacket. "It helps me think." They stood in his living room, the weight of decision hanging between them. Everything that happened next would change their dynamic irrevocably. "Kiesha," Mark said softly, "if you want to leave, if this is too much." She silenced him with another kiss, deeper this time, full of certainty. "I don't want to leave." His hands tangled in her curls as he kissed her back, months of professional restraint dissolving into raw attraction. When he lifted her into his arms, she wrapped her legs around his waist, letting him carry her toward his bedroom. They made love slowly, tenderly, learning each other's bodies with the same attention they'd brought to their professional collaboration. Mark worshipped her with his hands and mouth, making her feel beautiful and desired in ways she'd never experienced. When Kiesha finally fell asleep in his arms, the Atlanta skyline twinkling beyond the windows, she felt like she'd found something she didn't even know she'd been searching for. What do you think will happen when Kiesha's colleagues find out about her relationship with Mark? Will it help or hurt her career? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The sound of Mark's phone buzzing pulled Kiesha from sleep. Dawn was painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, and for a moment she felt disoriented. The expensive sheets, the unfamiliar room, the warm male body beside her. Then memory flooded back, and with it, a mixture of euphoria and terror. Mark stirred, reaching for his phone with a frown. "It's 6 a.m. Who the hell?" His expression darkened as he read the message. "Shit. What's wrong?" Kiesha sat up, suddenly aware of her nakedness, pulling the sheet around herself. Mark's jaw was tight as he showed her the phone. The message was from his assistant. Emergency board meeting moved to 8 a.m. Campaign presentation materials leaked to press. Need you here immediately. Kiesha's blood turned to ice. Leaked? How could they be leaked? I sent them directly to your encrypted email. I know. Mark was already getting up, reaching for his clothes. Something's not right here. As they dressed hurriedly, Kiesha's mind raced through possibilities. Only a handful of people had access to those files. Herself, Mark, his assistant, and the team at Sterling and Associates who'd helped with production. Her phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. Emergency at the office. Someone leaked the Morrison campaign to the press. Mr. Sterling wants to see you immediately. Kiesha showed Mark the message, her hands shaking. This can't be happening. Mark's expression was grim as he knotted his tie. We'll figure this out. Whatever's going on, we'll handle it together. But as they headed toward the elevator, Kiesha couldn't shake the feeling that their perfect night was about to become a nightmare that would test everything they'd just discovered about each other. The elevator descended toward the lobby, carrying them back to a world where their newfound intimacy might not survive the coming storm. The Sterling and Associates office buzzed with crisis energy when Kiesha arrived at 7:30, still wearing yesterday's emerald dress under her hastily grabbed blazer. The scent of burned coffee and stress sweat hung in the air as employees huddled around computer screens, their faces illuminated by the harsh glow of news websites and social media feeds. There she is. Rebecca's voice cut through the chaos, sharp with barely concealed satisfaction. The woman of the hour. Kiesha's stomach dropped as she approached the conference room, where Rebecca stood with Mr. Sterling and 3 other senior partners. Through the glass walls, she could see laptop screens displaying headlines that made her blood run cold. Morrison Industries affordable housing. Genuine outreach or calculated PR move? Leaked campaign documents reveal Billionaire's authentic community strategy. Building dreams or building profits? The truth behind Morrison's latest venture. Ms. Cole, Mr. Sterling's voice was granite. At 65, Richard Sterling had built his firm's reputation on discretion and security. A leak of this magnitude was his worst nightmare. I trust you have an explanation for this catastrophe. Kiesha's mouth went dry. Sir, I have no idea how this happened. The files were sent through encrypted email directly to Mr. Morrison's secure server. Only our internal team had access. Our internal team that you're responsible for managing, Rebecca interrupted, her blue eyes glittering with false sympathy. Kiesha, honey, I hate to say this, but didn't you have dinner with Mark Morrison last night? The question hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Every pair of eyes in the room fixed on Kiesha, and she felt her face flame with heat. Yes, but that has nothing to do with, doesn't it? Rebecca's voice dripped with concern that didn't reach her eyes. Think about it from the outside, sweetie. Young account executive gets cozy with billionaire client. Suddenly confidential campaign materials end up splashed across every major news outlet. It looks like someone was trying to generate buzz at our expense. That's insane. Kiesha's voice cracked with the injustice of it. Why would I destroy my own career? This campaign was everything to me. Mr. Sterling's expression remained coldly professional. Ms. Cole, I'm placing you on administrative leave pending a full investigation. You're to have no contact with Morrison Industries or any other clients until this matter is resolved. The words hit Kiesha like physical blows. Mr. Sterling, please. I would never. The decision is final. He turned to Rebecca. Ms. Thompson, I'm reassigning the Morrison account to you. Try to salvage what you can. Rebecca's smile was perfectly sympathetic. Of course, sir. I'll reach out to Mr. Morrison immediately to discuss damage control. Kiesha found herself standing on the sidewalk outside Sterling and Associates, her company ID confiscated, her access revoked, her career in shambles. The morning sun felt mockingly bright as Atlanta's rush hour swirled around her, everyone else heading purposefully to jobs they still had. Her phone buzzed with a text from Mark. Just heard about the administrative leave. This is insane. We need to talk. But before she could respond, another message appeared, this one from Rebecca. So sorry about everything, Hon. Just got assigned to clean up your mess. Don't worry. I'll make sure Mark understands you didn't mean for this to happen. Red heart. The heart emoji felt like a knife twist. Kiesha stared at her phone, pieces of a horrible puzzle beginning to form. Rebecca had been unusually interested in the Morrison account from the beginning. Rebecca who had access to all the campaign files. Rebecca who'd made those pointed comments about girls like them not being equals to men like Mark. But even as suspicion bloomed, doubt crept in alongside it. Maybe she was being paranoid. Maybe this really was just a horrible coincidence, and she was looking for someone to blame besides herself. Her phone rang. Mark's name on the screen. Kiesha, where are you? I've been trying to reach you. Outside the office. Her voice sounded hollow, even to herself. Mark, I swear I don't know how this happened. I would never. I know. His voice was firm, certain. You think I don't know you well enough to know you'd never do something like this? The faith in his voice made her eyes burn with unshed tears. You barely know me at all. We've had 3 months of phone calls and 1 night together. That one night told me everything I need to know about who you are. Mark's voice softened. Listen, I'm handling the press situation from my end. This will blow over. What matters is that we don't let this tear us apart. Mark. Kiesha closed her eyes, leaning against the building. Maybe Rebecca was right. Maybe we were kidding ourselves thinking this could work. Look what's happened already. Rebecca said that? Something sharp entered Mark's tone. When? Yesterday, before everything. Kiesha rubbed her temples, feeling the beginnings of a headache. She warned me that men like you don't really mix business with pleasure for girls like me. The silence on the other end stretched long enough to make Kiesha's chest tight with anxiety. Girls like you, Mark repeated finally, his voice dangerously quiet. What exactly did she mean by that? You know what she meant. The words tasted bitter. I'm an employee, not an equal. I'm someone you have dinner with, not someone you build a life with. Stop. Mark's voice was sharp enough to cut. Don't put words in my mouth, and don't let someone else's prejudices become your truth. But the seed of doubt had been planted. watered by years of feeling like she didn't quite belong, fertilized by the professional disaster unfolding around her. "I have to go," Kiesha said quietly. "I need to figure out how to salvage my career." "Kiesha, wait." She hung up, immediately regretting it, but too proud and too hurt to call back. 2 hours later, Rebecca Thompson sat in Mark Morrison's conference room, her perfectly styled blonde hair catching the morning light as she spread damage control strategies across the polished table. She'd changed into her most professional navy suit, the one that made her look like she belonged in boardrooms with men who controlled billions. "The good news," she was saying, her voice smooth as silk, "is that we can spin this as an overzealous junior employee acting without authorization. Kiesha is, well, she's young and ambitious. Sometimes that combination leads to poor judgment." Mark studied Rebecca's face, noting the calculated sympathy, the way she managed to sound concerned while systematically destroying her colleague's reputation. "You're suggesting Ms. Cole leaked her own campaign?" "I'm suggesting she may have gotten in over her head." Rebecca leaned forward, her expression earnest. "Look, I've known Kiesha since she started at Sterling. She's talented, but she's also insecure about her background. Sometimes people from certain circumstances feel like they have to prove themselves in ways that can backfire." "Certain circumstances." Mark's voice was flat. "I don't mean anything negative by it." Rebecca's protest sounded practiced. "It's just that Kiesha grew up very differently than most of us in this business. Sometimes that chip on her shoulder makes her take risks she shouldn't." Mark leaned back in his chair, studying Rebecca with the same intensity he brought to hostile takeovers. "Tell me, Ms. Thompson, how long have you wanted the Morrison account?" Rebecca's perfectly applied makeup couldn't quite hide the flash of surprise in her eyes. Well, of course I've always been interested in working with Morrison Industries. But this isn't about what I want. Isn't it?" Mark's voice dropped to the quiet tone his business rivals had learned to fear. "Because from where I sit, it looks like you're capitalizing on your colleague's misfortune very efficiently. Mr. Morrison, I assure you. How did the press get access to those files, Ms. Thompson?" Rebecca's pause was just a fraction too long. "I assume Kiesha must have sent them in her enthusiasm to impress you. Sometimes when someone is emotionally involved with a client." "Emotionally involved." Mark repeated the phrase like he was tasting something unpleasant. "You seem to know quite a bit about Ms. Cole's emotional state." "We're friends." "We're friends." Rebecca's mask of concern slipped just slightly. "She confided in me about her feelings for you. I tried to warn her that mixing business with pleasure rarely ends well, especially for someone in her position." Mark stood abruptly, his chair rolling back with enough force to hit the wall. "This meeting is over." "Mr. Morrison?" Rebecca's composure cracked. "I don't understand. I'm here to help fix the situation." "The situation," Mark said coldly, "seems to be fixing itself. You can show yourself out." As Rebecca gathered her materials with shaking hands, Mark was already reaching for his phone. He'd built a billion-dollar empire by learning to read people, by recognizing ambition disguised as concern, by spotting those who would sacrifice others for their own advancement. Rebecca Thompson reeked of all three. Kiesha spent the afternoon in her apartment, a modest one-bedroom in Virginia Highland that felt like a palace compared to the cramped house she'd grown up in. She'd changed into comfort clothes, worn jeans and a Howard University sweatshirt, and was stress cleaning her already spotless kitchen when her phone rang. Her sister Kiana's name on the screen was a lifeline. "Ki, I saw the news. Are you okay?" "Define okay." Kiesha scrubbed her counter with unnecessary force. "I've been suspended from my job. My biggest client probably thinks I'm either incompetent or manipulative, and my love life just imploded before it really started." "Love life?" Kiana's voice sharpened with interest. "This is about that billionaire, isn't it? The one you've been talking about for months, without admitting you like him." "I don't." Kiesha stopped, seeing no point in lying to the sister who knew her better than anyone. "It doesn't matter now. It's over before it began." "Says who?" "Says reality, Ki. Says the fact that we're from completely different worlds, and I was stupid to think otherwise." "Bullshit." Kiana's voice was fierce. Mama didn't raise us to think we weren't good enough for anybody. You earned your place in that office, you earned that client's respect, and if you earned his heart too, then that's yours to keep. Even if keeping it costs me everything else? Baby sister, what's everything else worth if you lose yourself in the process? Before Kiesha could answer, her apartment's intercom buzzed. She glanced at the security screen, and her heart stopped. Mark Morrison stood in her building's lobby, still in his business suit, his hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. He looked up at the camera with an expression that was part determination, part desperation. Kiesha, his voice crackled through the intercom. Please. I know you're up there. We need to talk. She stared at the screen, torn between the urge to run to him and the need to protect herself from further heartbreak. Ki, I have to go. Ki, whatever you're about to do, remember who you are. Remember that you deserve to be loved for exactly who you are, not for who you think you should be. Kiesha hung up and pressed the button to let Mark into the building. Do you think Kiesha should trust Mark, or is she right to protect herself? What would you do in her situation? Let me know in the comments below. When Mark knocked on her apartment door 3 minutes later, Kiesha had managed to run a brush through her hair, but hadn't bothered changing out of her comfort clothes. She opened the door to find him looking more disheveled than she'd ever seen him. Tie loosened, jacket wrinkled, something almost frantic in his usually composed expression. You hung up on me, he said without preamble. I was protecting us both. From what? Kiesha stepped aside to let him in, hyper-aware of how different her modest apartment must seem after his penthouse. From making a bigger mess than we already have. Mark looked around her living room. The second-hand furniture she'd refinished herself, the books stacked on every available surface, the framed photos of her family covering one wall like a gallery of love. When his gaze landed on her Howard University diploma, prominently displayed above her desk, something in his expression softened. You think I care about any of this, he said quietly. The apartment, the furniture, the fact that you grew up with less money than I did. Don't you? The question came out smaller than she'd intended. Mark turned to face her fully, his blue eyes intense. Kiesha, do you know what I saw when I walked into your office that first day? Not someone who didn't belong there, but someone who belonged there more than anyone else in the building. You had ideas that mattered, passion that couldn't be faked, authenticity that everyone else was trying to manufacture. That's not what Rebecca sees. Fuck Rebecca. The curse was so unexpected from composed Mark Morrison that Kiesha blinked in surprise. She's been trying to undermine you from the beginning, hasn't she? She's my friend. Friends don't plant seeds of doubt about your worth. Friends don't make you question whether you deserve the good things that come into your life. Mark stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, see the flecks of silver in his blue eyes. That woman wants your life, Kiesha. Your job, your success, your us. The word us hung in the air between them, fragile and precious. There is no us, Kiesha said, but her voice lacked conviction. There can't be. Look what's happened already. What's happened is that someone is trying to destroy you, and they're using our relationship as the weapon. Mark's voice was quiet but fierce. The question is, are we going to let them? Kiesha wanted to believe him. Wanted to trust that the connection between them was real and worth fighting for. But the events of the day had shaken her confidence in her own judgment. Mark, I don't even know who leaked those files. If it wasn't me then. It was Rebecca. The certainty in his voice made Kiesha's breath catch. You can't know that. I can, and I do. Mark pulled out his phone, showing her a series of text messages. After you hung up on me, I did some digging. Rebecca Thompson sent these messages to a reporter at the Atlanta Business Journal. Want to guess what time they were sent? Kiesha's hands shook as she read the timestamps. Last night, while we were at dinner. While you were with me, she was destroying your career and positioning herself to swoop in as your replacement. Mark's jaw was tight with anger. She played us both, Kiesha. She knew exactly which buttons to push to make you doubt yourself, doubt us. The betrayal hit Kiesha like a physical blow. Rebecca, who'd been her closest friend at the firm. Rebecca, who'd celebrated her successes and consoled her failures. Rebecca, who'd known exactly how to weaponize her insecurities. Why? The word came out broken. Because she's ambitious and ruthless, and she saw you as competition she could eliminate. Mark's voice gentled as he saw the pain in her eyes. I'm sorry. I know she was your friend. I thought she was. Kiesha sank onto her couch, the full weight of the betrayal settling over her. God, I'm such an idiot. No. Mark sat beside her, close enough to touch, but giving her space to process. You're trusting. There's a difference. Trusting gets you stabbed in the back. Sometimes. But it also gets you this. Mark gestured between them. What we have, what we found last night, that only exists because you were brave enough to be vulnerable, to be real with me. Kiesha looked at him, this man who'd somehow become the center of her storm. What do we do now? Now, Mark said, his voice carrying the steel that had built an empire. We fight back. Mark's declaration hung in the air between them like a battle cry. Kiesha studied his face, seeing the same determination that had built Morrison Industries from a family construction company into a multi-billion-dollar empire. What exactly does fighting back look like? She asked, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. Mark pulled out his laptop, his fingers flying across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. It looks like using every resource at my disposal to prove Rebecca Thompson is a manipulative fraud who leaked confidential materials to advance her own career. You can't go to war with Sterling and Associates over me, Kiesha protested. They're one of the most respected firms in Atlanta. I'm just the woman I'm falling in love with. The words stopped her protest mid-sentence. Mark's eyes never left his screen, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. So yes, I absolutely can and will go to war for you. Falling in love. The words echoed in Kiesha's chest, terrifying and wonderful in equal measure. Mark. She started, but he held up a hand. Found it. His voice carried grim satisfaction. Rebecca sent the files to 3 different reporters last night at 9:47 p.m. 43 minutes after we left the restaurant. Kiesha leaned over to look at his screen, close enough to catch his familiar scent of expensive cologne and something uniquely him. How did you get access to? Never mind. I don't want to know. The less you know about my information networks, the better. Mark's smile was sharp as a blade. But this is just the beginning. Rebecca made one critical mistake. She got greedy. What do you mean? Mark pulled up another screen, this one showing financial records. She didn't just leak your campaign. She's been selling information to Hartwell Marketing for months. Client strategies, upcoming pitches, competitive intelligence. She's been systematically sabotaging Sterling and Associates from the inside. Kiesha's breath caught. That's corporate espionage. That's exactly what it is. And when Mr. Sterling realizes his golden girl has been bleeding clients to his biggest competitor, he's going to be very interested in making amends with the employee she framed. The pieces clicked together in Kiesha's mind. All those accounts we lost in the last quarter. The Henderson project, the Coastal Bank campaign. We kept losing to Hartwell on presentations that should have been slam dunks. Because they knew your strategies before you even pitched them. Mark's fingers continued flying across the keyboard. Rebecca positioned herself as the solution to problems she was creating. Kiesha felt sick. How many of her colleagues had lost opportunities because of Rebecca's betrayal? How many campaigns had she unknowingly helped sabotage by sharing ideas and strategies with someone she'd trusted? I need to call Mr. Sterling, she said, reaching for her phone. Not yet. Mark caught her hand, his touch gentle but firm. We need more than accusations. We need proof that will stick in court, because this is going to court. Court? Kiesha, Rebecca didn't just betray you personally. She committed fraud, corporate espionage, and breach of fiduciary duty. She's going to prison for this. Mark's voice was hard as granite. But first, she's going to confess and clear your name. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of phone calls, document reviews, and strategic planning. Mark's team of lawyers and investigators descended on Kiesha's apartment like a well-dressed army, transforming her modest living room into a war room. They had Rebecca's financial records showing payments from Hartwell Marketing. They had timestamps proving she'd leaked the Morrison campaign, while Kiesha was having dinner with Mark. They had email trails, phone records, and security footage that painted a picture of systematic corporate sabotage. "It's airtight," announced Patricia Chen, Mark's lead attorney. "Ms. Thompson is facing federal charges for commercial espionage. If we approach this correctly, she'll confess to avoid prosecution." Mark looked at Kiesha, who'd been unusually quiet during the legal strategizing. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking about all the times she consoled me when I lost a pitch," Kiesha said slowly. "All the times she told me I wasn't ready for bigger accounts, that I should be grateful for what I had. She was gaslighting me while she stole my work." "I'm sorry." Mark's voice was soft. "I know how much her friendship meant to you." "Did it?" Kiesha's laugh held no humor. "Or was I just so desperate to belong somewhere that I mistook manipulation for friendship?" Mark crossed the room to sit beside her on the couch, ignoring the lawyers and investigators bustling around them. "Hey, look at me." Kiesha met his blue eyes, seeing warmth and certainty there. "You belong everywhere you choose to be," he said quietly. "Your talent is real. Your success is earned. And anyone who tries to make you think otherwise is revealing their own insecurity, not yours." The simple declaration broke something loose in Kiesha's chest. She'd spent so long questioning her worth, so many years feeling like an imposter, that she'd forgotten the most important truth. She'd earned every opportunity through her own merit. "I want to be there when you confront her," she said. Mark's eyebrows rose. "Kiesha, that might not be wise. She's going to say things designed to hurt you. Let her try." Kiesha's voice carried new steel. "I want to look her in the eye when her world falls apart. I want her to know that I know exactly who she is." Mark studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, but we do this my way. No confrontation until we have her cornered with irrefutable evidence." "Agreed." Patricia Chen cleared her throat. "If we're going to do this today, we need to move now. Ms. Thompson is at Sterling and Associates, presumably cleaning up loose ends before her deception is discovered." Mark stood, pulling Kiesha to her feet. "Then let's go remind her that actions have consequences." Sterling and Associates felt different when Kiesha walked through the doors flanked by Mark Morrison and his legal team. Conversations stopped mid-sentence as employees recognized the billionaire client, their faces showing confusion about why he was there with their suspended colleague. Mr. Sterling emerged from his office, his expression carefully neutral. "Mr. Morrison, I wasn't expecting you today." "Emergency meeting," Mark replied smoothly. "Conference room. Now. And I need Rebecca Thompson there immediately." Something in Mark's tone made argument impossible. Mr. Sterling nodded to his assistant, who scurried away to fetch Rebecca. The conference room filled quickly. Mr. Sterling, the senior partners, Rebecca looking confused and slightly nervous, and Mark's legal team setting up laptops and documents with military precision. Rebecca's eyes found Kiesha, and her expression shifted to calculated sympathy. "Kiesha, honey, what are you doing here? I thought you were on administrative leave." "I'm here," Kiesha said calmly, "to watch you explain why you've been stealing from this firm for months." Rebecca's perfect mask slipped for just a fraction of a second. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you?" Mark's voice cut through the room like ice. "Ms. Thompson, are you familiar with the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act?" "Aye. What does that have to do with anything?" Patricia Chen opened her laptop, projecting financial records onto the conference room screen. "These are your bank records, Ms. Thompson. Specifically, deposits from Hartwell Marketing totaling $47,000 over the past 6 months." The color drained from Rebecca's face. "I don't know how. Here are the email logs showing you sending confidential Sterling and Associates campaign materials to Hartwell's creative director." Another screen appeared. "And here are the timestamps showing you leaked the Morrison Industries campaign at 9:47 p.m. yesterday, while Ms. Cole was having dinner with Mr. Morrison." Mr. Sterling's face had gone from confusion to fury. "Rebecca, please tell me there's an explanation for this." Rebecca's composure cracked completely. "It's not what it looks like. It looks like corporate espionage," Mark said coldly. "It looks like you've been systematically betraying your colleagues and clients for money. You don't understand." Rebecca's voice rose, desperation bleeding through. Do you know what it's like to watch someone like her get everything handed to them? She waltzes in here with her sob story about growing up poor, and suddenly everyone thinks she's special. She gets the best accounts, the biggest opportunities. Because she earned them, Mr. Sterling interrupted, his voice deadly quiet. Did she? Or did everyone just feel sorry for the charity case? Rebecca's mask fell away completely, revealing the ugliness beneath. I have an MBA from Harvard. I have connections, breeding, everything that actually matters in this business. But somehow little Kiesha from the projects gets to play with the billionaires. What do you think motivates people like Rebecca to tear others down instead of building themselves up? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The silence that followed was deafening. Kiesha felt every eye in the room on her, but instead of shame, she felt something powerful and clean. The absolute certainty of her own worth. You're right about one thing, Kiesha said, her voice carrying across the room with quiet authority. I did grow up poor. I did work twice as hard as everyone else to get here. And you know what? I'm proud of that, because it taught me that success means something when you earn it honestly. She stood, meeting Rebecca's gaze directly. What you never understood is that your breeding and connections mean nothing if you don't have character. And character isn't something you can fake forever. Rebecca's face twisted with rage. This isn't over. You think he's going to choose you? A billionaire like Mark Morrison doesn't end up with the help, no matter how pretty the package. The insult hung in the air like a poison cloud. Mark rose slowly from his chair, his expression arctic. Ms. Thompson, he said quietly, you've just made your situation significantly worse. Patricia Chin stepped forward with a folder. Rebecca Thompson, you're being served with a federal indictment for commercial espionage, fraud, and violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. You have the right to remain silent. Wait, Rebecca's voice cracked with panic. I can explain. I can fix this. The Morrison campaign. I can make sure it stays buried. We can work together. The only thing you're going to do, Mark said, is confess to Mr. Sterling that you framed Ms. Cole to cover your own crimes. Mr. Sterling's face was a thundercloud. Is that true, Rebecca? Did you leak confidential materials and then blame Kiesha? The fight went out of Rebecca all at once. Her shoulders sagged as she realized the full extent of her exposure. Yes, she whispered. I leaked the campaign. Kiesha had nothing to do with it. And the other campaigns? Henderson Coastal Bank. Those two. Rebecca's voice was barely audible. I'm sorry. I wanted what she had. Mr. Sterling turned to Kiesha, his expression grave. Ms. Cole, on behalf of Sterling and Associates, I offer you our sincere apologies. Your suspension is lifted immediately, and we'll be discussing compensation for the damage to your reputation. Actually, Mark interjected smoothly, Ms. Cole won't be returning to Sterling and Associates. Every head in the room swiveled toward him. Kiesha felt her heart stop. She's going to be starting her own firm, Mark continued, his eyes never leaving Kiesha's face. And Morrison Industries will be her first client. Exclusive contract, 5 years, with a signing bonus that should more than cover her startup costs. Kiesha stared at him, speechless. Around the table, she could see the senior partners calculating what they'd just lost. Not just a talented employee, but their biggest client and a potential powerhouse competitor. Mark, she managed to whisper, you can't just. I can and I am. He stood, extending his hand to her. That is, if you'll have me as a client. The room held its breath. Kiesha looked around the table, at Mr. Sterling's calculating expression, at the partners who'd never quite believed in her potential, at Rebecca, who was being escorted out by security. Then she looked at Mark, who was offering her not just a job, but a future. She took his hand. I'd be honored. An hour later, they stood on the roof deck of Morrison Industries, Atlanta spreading out below them in the afternoon sun. The legal team had finished their work. Rebecca was in federal custody, and Kiesha's name was completely cleared. But somehow, the victory felt secondary to the man standing beside her. I can't believe you just poached me in front of my entire former employer, she said, laughing despite everything. Technically, I offered you a better opportunity. Mark's eyes crinkled with amusement. Besides, they were idiots to not recognize your worth. Their loss is my gain. Is that what this is? A business acquisition? Mark turned to face her fully, his expression growing serious. You know it's not. The afternoon breeze stirred around them, carrying the sense of the city. Coffee and exhaust and possibility. Kiesha felt like she was standing at the edge of everything she'd ever wanted, terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. Mark, what are we doing? Really? We're choosing each other, he said simply. Over fear, over other people's expectations, over the easy path that keeps us safe but alone. And if it doesn't work? If we crash and burn? Mark stepped closer, close enough that she could see her reflection in his blue eyes. Then we'll crash and burn together. But Kiesha, I'd rather take that risk with you than play it safe with anyone else. The declaration hung between them like a bridge over an abyss, terrifying and necessary and real. I love you, she said, the words coming out steady and sure. Not accidentally this time. Completely on purpose. Mark's smile could have powered half of Georgia. I love you too. Completely, purposefully, and permanently if you'll let me. When he kissed her, Atlanta faded away. There was only this, the taste of his mouth, the warmth of his hands in her hair, the absolute certainty that whatever came next, they would face it together. So, Mark murmured against her lips, ready to be a business owner? With you as my first client? I think I can handle that challenge. Just the first client, Mark said, his eyes dancing with mischief. I plan to be much more than that. Oh really? What else do you plan to be? Mark's answer was another kiss, deeper this time, full of promises and possibilities. When they finally broke apart, Kiesha was breathless and dizzy with happiness. Your partner, he said softly. In everything. The words settled over her like a benediction. After years of feeling like she was fighting for her place in the world, she'd found someone who wanted to build that place with her. Partners, she agreed, sealing the deal with another kiss. Below them, Atlanta hummed with life and ambition. But 30 stories up, two people who'd found authentic love in an artificial world began planning their future together. 6 months later, the offices of Cole Strategic Marketing occupied the top floor of a gleaming tower in Buckhead, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of Atlanta's skyline. Kiesha stood at those windows now, coffee in hand, watching the city wake up in the early morning light. The gold lettering on her glass doors read Kiesha Cole, CO. Words that still made her heart skip with pride and disbelief. Behind her, the office hummed with purposeful energy. In 6 months, she'd grown from a one-woman operation to a team of 12, with clients ranging from tech startups to established corporations seeking authentic community engagement strategies. The Morrison Industries contract had been just the beginning. Word of her innovative campaigns had spread through Atlanta's business community like wildfire. Morning Boss, called Jasmine, who'd followed Kiesha from Sterling and Associates along with 3 other former colleagues. The Riverside Development presentation is locked and loaded for 10 a.m. Perfect. Kiesha turned from the windows, her smile warm with genuine affection for her team. And Jasmine? Stop calling me boss. We've talked about this. Old habits, Jasmine grinned. Besides, some titles are earned. The morning flew by in a blur of client calls, strategy sessions, and creative brainstorming. Cole Strategic had quickly gained a reputation for campaigns that felt authentic rather than manufactured, for understanding the heart of what clients wanted to achieve rather than just selling products. Kiesha's background, her understanding of struggle and aspiration, had become her greatest asset rather than something to overcome. At noon, her assistant knocked on her office door. Kiesha? Mr. Morrison is here for your lunch meeting. Even after 6 months of daily contact, Kiesha's pulse still quickened at the mention of Mark's name. Their relationship had evolved from that explosive beginning into something deeper, more complex, and infinitely more satisfying than either had imagined possible. Mark appeared in her doorway, impeccably dressed as always, but with the relaxed confidence that came from being with someone who loved him for exactly who he was. Ready for lunch, partner? The word partner had taken on layers of meaning between them. Business partners, certainly, Their professional collaboration had exceeded every expectation. But also life partners, lovers, best friends, and something that was moving inexorably toward forever. "Let me grab my jacket," Kiesha said, but Mark was already crossing the room to her. "First things first," he murmured, cupping her face for a soft kiss that tasted like coming home. "Mark," she laughed against his lips. "We're in my office. People can see." "Let them see," he said, but he stepped back, his eyes warm with the affection that had only grown stronger over the months. "I'm proud to be seen with the most successful woman in Atlanta. Flattery will get you everywhere. I'm counting on it." They had lunch at their favorite spot. Not the expensive restaurants Mark could afford, but a small Ethiopian place in Little 5 Points where the food was incredible and no one cared that one of Atlanta's most powerful men was sharing injera with a woman who'd grown up in the projects. It was one of the things Kiesha loved most about their relationship. Mark's genuine desire to experience the world through her eyes, to understand the communities and cultures that had shaped her. "I have news," Mark said as they settled into their usual corner booth. "Good news, or we need to have a serious conversation news?" "Definitely good." Mark's smile was mysterious. "The Morrison Foundation Board approved your proposal for the East Atlanta Community Center. Full funding, 5-year commitment." Kiesha's fork clattered to her plate. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious. Construction starts next month." Mark reached across the table to take her hand. "You're going to transform the neighborhood where you grew up, Kiesha. Kids who feel like they don't belong anywhere are going to have a place that shows them they belong everywhere." Tears pricked at Kiesha's eyes. The community center project had been her passion for months. A place where kids from backgrounds like hers could get tutoring, mentorship, and most importantly, the message that their dreams were valid and achievable. "I can't believe it's real," she whispered. "It's real. You made it real." Mark's thumb brushed across her knuckles. "This is what happens when someone with your vision gets the resources to make it happen." "Our resources," she corrected. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." "You could have," Mark said seriously. "It would have taken longer, been harder, but you would have found a way. That's who you are." The simple faith in his voice still had the power to undo her. 6 months ago, she'd been convinced she was an imposter. Now, she was building the life she'd always dreamed of, surrounded by people who believed in her potential. "There's something else," Mark continued, his expression shifting to something more serious. "Rebecca's sentencing hearing is next week." Kiesha nodded. The federal case against Rebecca had moved swiftly once she'd confessed. 18 months in federal prison, restitution to Sterling and Associates and their affected clients, and a permanent ban from working in marketing or public relations. It was justice, but Kiesha found she felt more pity than satisfaction. "I won't be attending," she said quietly. "I'm done looking backward." "I love that about you," Mark said softly. "Your ability to focus on building something better instead of dwelling on what tried to tear you down." They spent the rest of lunch planning the community center's programs, their conversation flowing with the easy rhythm they'd developed. Business and personal were so intertwined now that Kiesha couldn't imagine separating them. Mark understood her vision in a way that felt like he could see directly into her soul. That evening, Kiesha worked late in her office, finalizing the community center proposals. The building was quiet, most of her team having gone home hours ago, but she loved these peaceful evening hours when she could focus without interruption. She was so absorbed in her work that she didn't hear the elevator, didn't notice she wasn't alone until warm hands settled on her shoulders. "You missed dinner," Mark's voice was soft in her ear. "I'm sorry, I lost track of time." She leaned back against him, feeling the familiar comfort of his presence. "The center proposals are due tomorrow, and I want them to be perfect." "They already are." Mark's hands moved to her neck, his thumbs working at the tension there. "You're a perfectionist when it comes to things that matter to you. This matters more than anything else I've ever worked on." "I know." Mark pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "That's why it's going to be extraordinary." His hands continued their gentle massage, and Kiesha felt the stress of the day melting away. This had become their evening ritual. Mark would appear when she worked too late, grounding her with his presence, reminding her that success meant nothing if you forgot to actually live your life. "Come home with me," he murmured against her hair. "I should finish. It can wait until tomorrow." Mark turned her chair, so she faced him, his expression serious. "Kiesha, the work will always be there. But us, right now, this is what actually matters." She looked up at him, seeing the man who'd supported her through starting her own business, who celebrated every victory and helped her learn from every setback, who'd shown her that love didn't have to mean choosing between personal happiness and professional success. "Take me home," she said softly. Mark's penthouse had evolved over the months to reflect both their tastes. Kiesha's books shared shelf space with his business journals. Her family photos sat alongside his artwork. The guitar that had been gathering dust was now joined by a keyboard. Kiesha had been taking lessons, discovering a musical side of herself she'd never explored. They moved through their evening routine with comfortable intimacy, Mark opening wine while Kiesha changed into one of his shirts and a pair of soft pants. They cooked dinner together, a simple pasta dish that they ate while sharing stories from their day. "I love this," Kiesha said as they cleaned up, Mark washing dishes while she dried. "Washing dishes? This. Us. The ordinary moments." She set down the towel, turning to face him. "6 months ago, I thought I had to choose between love and success. I never imagined I could have both." Mark dried his hands, then pulled her into his arms. "You deserve both. You deserve everything." When he kissed her, it was with the passion that had ignited between them that first night, but also with the deeper emotion that had grown through months of building a life together. Kiesha melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. "I love you," she whispered against his lips. "Completely, purposefully, forever." "Forever," Mark agreed, lifting her into his arms. He carried her to their bedroom. It had become theirs without any formal discussion, simply because they couldn't bear to spend nights apart. They made love slowly, tenderly, learning each other's bodies anew with each encounter. Mark worshipped her with his hands and mouth, telling her with his touch how precious she was to him. Kiesha gave herself completely, holding nothing back, secure in the knowledge that this man would guard her heart as carefully as his own. Afterward, they lay tangled in expensive sheets, Atlanta twinkling beyond the windows, talking about their future with the easy confidence of two people who'd found their match. "I have something for you," Mark said eventually, reaching into his nightstand drawer. "It's not my birthday. It's better than a birthday." Mark's voice carried a nervous excitement she'd never heard before. "It's the anniversary of the phone call that changed our lives." Kiesha's breath caught as he produced a small velvet box. "Mark, I know it's only been 6 months. I know people will say we're moving too fast." Mark's voice was steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "But I also know that I want to spend the rest of my life hearing you accidentally tell me you love me." He opened the box, revealing a ring that was stunning in its simplicity. A single, perfect diamond that caught the light from the city below and threw it back in rainbow fragments. "Kiesha Cole," Mark said, his voice soft with wonder. "Will you marry me?" The question hung in the air between them, loaded with all the promise of the future they'd build together. Kiesha looked at the ring, at the man who'd seen her worth when she'd doubted it herself, who'd fought for her when she'd needed a champion, who'd loved her exactly as she was while inspiring her to become even more. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes." Mark's smile could have powered the entire city as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her all along. "I love you," she said, admiring the way the diamond caught the light. "And this time, it's definitely not an accident." Mark's laugh was pure joy as he pulled her close for a kiss that tasted like forever. "What do you think about finding love when you least expect it? Have you ever had a moment that completely changed your life's direction? Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear about the unexpected turns that led you to where you are today. 1 year later, the grand opening of the East Atlanta Community Center was everything Kiesha had dreamed and more. Children ran through the bright, modern spaces while parents toured the computer lab, the art studio, the library filled with books that reflected their community's diversity. Local news crews captured interviews with teenagers who talked about their college plans with the confidence of kids who'd been told their dreams were achievable. Kiesha stood in the main lobby, watching the controlled chaos with a heart so full it felt like it might burst. The center was more than a building. It was proof that change was possible, that investing in communities, rather than just talking about them, could create real transformation. "Penny for your thoughts," Mark said, appearing beside her with 2 cups of punch from the refreshment table. "Just thinking about the girl who grew up 10 blocks from here," Kiesha said, accepting the cup gratefully. "She never could have imagined this." "She imagined it," Mark corrected gently. "She just didn't know how to make it real yet." Around them, the community center buzzed with life and possibility. Cole Strategic Marketing had grown into one of Atlanta's most sought-after firms, with offices in 3 cities and a reputation for campaigns that actually changed communities rather than just selling products. The Morrison Industries affordable housing project had become a model for corporate social responsibility nationwide. But standing here, surrounded by children who looked like she had at their age, Kiesha knew this was her greatest achievement. "Mrs. Morrison," a small voice tugged at her dress. Kiesha looked down to see Aaliyah, a 7-year-old from the neighborhood whose mother worked 3 jobs. "Is it true you grew up here too?" "I did," Kiesha said, kneeling to meet the girl at eye level. "Right down the street, in a house a lot like yours. And now you're rich and famous?" Kiesha laughed. "I'm successful because I work hard, and I had people who believed in me. Just like you do. Will you teach me how to be successful too?" "Baby girl," Kiesha said, her heart squeezing tight. "You're already on your way. You just need to remember that you belong anywhere you decide to plant your feet." Aaliyah beamed and ran off to explore the art studio, leaving Kiesha with tears in her eyes. "Come here," Mark said softly, pulling her into his arms right there in the middle of the crowded lobby. "Mark, people are watching. Let them watch." He kissed her forehead, then her nose, then her lips. "Let them see how proud I am of my brilliant, beautiful, world-changing wife." The word wife still sent a thrill through her. They'd married 6 months ago in a ceremony that was half Atlanta society wedding, half East Atlanta block party. Kiesha's family had mixed with Mark's business associates, creating a celebration that was uniquely theirs. Elegant but authentic, formal but warm. "I have a surprise for you," Mark murmured in her ear. "Another surprise? You've already given me everything I ever wanted." "Have I?" Mark's eyes danced with mischief. "What about the little Morrison you've been talking about wanting?" Kiesha's breath caught. "Mark, are you saying?" "I'm saying that Dr. Patterson called this morning with the results of your blood work." Mark's smile was soft with wonder. "Congratulations, Mama. We're having a baby." The words hit her like a lightning bolt of pure joy. A baby. Their baby. A child who would grow up knowing they were wanted, loved, capable of anything. "Are you serious?" she whispered. "Completely serious." Mark's hands settled on her still flat stomach with reverent gentleness. "In about 7 months, we're going to have a little person who's going to be just as brilliant and stubborn and world-changing as their mother." Kiesha threw her arms around his neck, not caring who was watching, not caring about anything except this perfect moment in this perfect life they'd built together. "I love you," she said against his lips. "Completely, purposefully, forever and always." "Forever and always," Mark agreed. As they kissed in the lobby of the community center that bore both their names, surrounded by children who represented the future they were building together, Kiesha marveled at the journey that had brought them here. It had started with an accidental slip of the tongue, a moment of vulnerability that could have destroyed everything. Instead, it had been the beginning of everything. Around them, Atlanta hummed with life and possibility. Above them, their baby grew safe and loved. And in the space between heartbeats, between one kiss and the next, Kiesha Cole Morrison knew with absolute certainty that sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin with the simplest truth. Love you. Not accidentally, not apologetically, but completely, purposefully, and forever.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. so do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.